My stepmom dumped me on the side of the road after I refused to sign over the house I inherited from my dad. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Either you give me the house or our relationship is over." I simply replied, "Never." Then she drove off without a second thought. But when she arrived home expecting victory, she froze, because the house was completely emptied out, and I was standing in the driveway with two men by my side, ready to reclaim everything she thought she could steal. I never imagined I'd be sharing a story like this, but here it is. This is about how my stepmother's grasping nature backfired spectacularly, leaving her with nothing but remorse. To set the scene, my mother passed away from cancer when I was 6. She was my entire world, my steady point, and her loss nearly shattered me. I can still recall the hospital visits, her attempts to smile through the discomfort, and how she'd read me stories even when she was too frail to sit up. She fought hard, but in the end, the cancer was too aggressive. I was holding her hand when she faded away, my dad on her other side, both of us weeping as the monitors went silent. My dad was equally devastated but tried his best to keep us afloat. He worked long hours at his engineering firm, arranged for a neighbor to look after me after school, and did his utmost to learn how to braid my hair and prepare lunches that weren't just peanut butter sandwiches. I'd often find him late at night in Mom's reading chair, poring over photo albums with tears streaming down his face. He thought I was asleep, but sometimes I'd join him, and we'd remember her together. Just 1 year after Mom died, he met Diane at a work event. She was the new office administrator, about 10 years younger than my dad, stylish, and confident in a way that drew attention. Initially, she seemed pleasant enough, attentive, charming, and seemingly concerned about my dad's happiness. She brought him lunches at work, offered to help with me, and appeared genuinely eager to ease his burden. Looking back, I can see how a grieving, overwhelmed single father might have been an easy target for someone like her. They married quickly when I was barely 7, in a small ceremony at City Hall. I wore a dress Mom had bought me for my kindergarten graduation, and Diane remarked that it was a little childlike but would have to suffice. The house I grew up in, a beautiful Victorian with a wraparound porch in a historic neighborhood, had been in my mother's family for generations. It was built in 1897 by my great-great-grandfather, who had made his fortune in shipping. The house was rich with history, ornate woodwork he had carved himself, stained glass windows that cast rainbow patches across the floors in the afternoon light, hidden nooks and crannies where generations of children had played hide-and-seek. Before she passed, Mom made sure it would go directly to me upon her death, but with the stipulation that my dad could live there until he either remarried or passed away. She'd updated her will during those final hospital stays, working with a lawyer friend who specialized in estate planning. I remember her explaining to me in simple terms, a child could understand, how important the house was to our family. "This house is our heart," she'd said, touching my chest gently. "And now it will be yours to protect." Since he remarried, Diane, technically, the house was already mine, though I was too young to understand this at the time. I don't think Dad fully explained the situation to Diane before they married. Maybe he thought it wouldn't matter, or perhaps he was just so desperate for companionship that he glossed over it. Either way, it became clear that Diane had assumptions about what she was entering into, assumptions that were very wrong. Things were all right at first, but Diane's attitude toward me began to shift. The woman who had smiled so sweetly at me during their courtship transformed once the marriage certificate was signed. She became cold, impatient, and clearly resented, having to care for another woman's child. She'd make comments about how much space my toys occupied, how expensive my school supplies were, and how the house would be so much nicer without children's items everywhere. "This isn't a daycare center," she'd snap when I left my backpack in the hallway. "This is a historic home that deserves respect." She began redecorating almost immediately, replacing Mom's comfortable, well-loved furniture with modern pieces that were sleek but unwelcoming. The warm colors Mom had chosen for the walls, soft blues and greens that reminded her of the ocean she loved, were painted over with stark white. Family photos disappeared from the walls, replaced by abstract art that Diane claimed was more sophisticated. Dad tried to mediate at first. "Diane, that chair was Jaime's favorite spot to read with her mom," he'd say gently. Or, "Those curtains were handmade by Jaime's grandmother." But Diane always had a ready response. The chair is threadbare and stained. The curtains are faded and outdated. And Dad, still raw from his loss and grateful for adult companionship, would eventually give in. It was as if she was trying to erase any trace of my mother from the house and, by extension, me. I started spending more time in my bedroom. The one place Diane hadn't completely transformed yet, though she often commented on how the juvenile decorations would need to be updated soon. One day, about a year after they married, I was 8 years old, and Diane told me we were going on a special trip. Dad was away on a business trip, so it was just the two of us. I was excited at first. Maybe this was her way of bonding with me. Maybe things would get better between us. I even imagined us shopping for ice cream or going to a movie. Normal stepmother-stepdaughter activities that might bridge the growing gap between us. I put on my favorite outfit, a blue dress with butterflies that Mom had bought me, and waited, by the door, clutching my little purse that contained the allowance I'd been saving. Maybe I could buy Diane a small gift, something to make her like me more. The thought seems so painfully naive now. When she came downstairs, she looked annoyed at my outfit. "We're not going to a birthday party," she said with a sigh. "Change into something practical." I hurried upstairs and changed into jeans and a t-shirt, not wanting to upset her before our special outing had even begun. When I came back down, she was checking her watch impatiently. "Where are we going?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful as we got into her sleek black BMW. "Just somewhere we need to talk privately," she answered, not looking at me as she backed out of the driveway. We drove for almost an hour, heading out of town. I watched as the familiar streets and buildings of our neighborhood fell away, replaced by countryside and then increasingly remote farmland. I started to get nervous when she turned onto a country road I didn't recognize. The pavement was rough, with potholes that made the car bounce. There were no houses in sight, just fields, and occasional clusters of trees. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Just a special place," she said with a strange smile that didn't reach her eyes. She eventually pulled over on a deserted stretch of road, nothing but fields on either side. She turned to me with a serious expression. "Listen carefully," she said. "Your mother left you that house, and I need you to sign it over to me." I was confused. At 8 years old, I barely understood what she was talking about, but I did know the house had been my mom's special gift to me. "Mom wanted me to have it," I said simply. Diane's face hardened. "Either you agree to give me the house when you're older, or our relationship is over. I'll leave you here." I was terrified, but somehow found my voice. "Never," I whispered. Without another word, she reached across me, opened my passenger door, and pushed me out. Before I could fully comprehend what was happening, she sped away, leaving me alone on that desolate road. I sat down on the grassy edge and cried. I didn't know where I was or how to get home. I was terrified of the growing darkness, of the strange sounds coming from the fields around me, of the occasional car that would speed by without stopping. Each time headlights appeared in the distance, I would stand up and wave my arms, hoping someone would see me, but they always drove past too quickly. The sun was starting to set, and the temperature was dropping. I huddled into myself, wrapping my arms around my knees, trying to stay warm in just my t-shirt and jeans. I thought about my dad, about what he would do when he came home and found me gone. Would Diane tell him I'd run away? Would he believe her? I thought about my mom and wondered if she could see me from heaven. I promised her I would never give up the house, even as my teeth chattered from cold and fear. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, a car slowed to a stop beside me. An elderly couple peered out at me with concerned expressions. The woman rolled down her window. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked, her face lined with worry. "What are you doing out here all alone?" I was crying too hard to speak clearly, but I managed to tell them that my stepmother had left me there. The woman exchanged a glance with her husband, who was already getting out of the car. "I'm Margaret, and this is Henry," she said gently, opening the back door. "Let's get you somewhere warm and safe, and then we'll figure this out." "Okay." They wrapped me in a blanket they had in their trunk, gave me a bottle of water, and called the police from their car phone. I remember the kindness in their voices as they reassured me that everything would be okay, that I was safe now. Margaret sat in the back seat with me, holding my hand until the police arrived. The next few days were a blur. Dad returned early from his trip. There were police interviews, social workers, and lots of adults talking in hushed voices around me. I was examined at a hospital, given hot chocolate by a kind nurse, and asked the same questions over and over again by different people with clipboards and concerned expressions. Diane claimed I had run away, that she'd been looking for me everywhere. She put on a convincing show of concern, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue while explaining to the police that I'd been acting out ever since she married my father. "I've tried so hard to be a mother to her," she said, her voice breaking just enough to sound sincere. "But she's never accepted me." But the elderly couple's testimony and my consistent story eventually revealed the truth. Margaret and Henry described finding me alone on that deserted road, miles from any house or business, terrified and cold as darkness fell. They had taken photos of the location with their disposable camera, noting the time and exact spot where they found me. And my story never wavered, no matter how many times I had to tell it. When the police confronted Diane with these inconsistencies, her facade began to crack. Her story changed. First, she insisted I had jumped out of the car during an argument. Then she claimed she had only driven a short distance away to teach me a lesson and had intended to come right back. But cell phone tower records showed her phone had been at our house for nearly an hour after she left me, and a neighbor had seen her calmly working in the garden. Dad was shattered. I'll never forget the look on his face when the police explained what they believed had happened, that his wife had deliberately abandoned his 8-year-old daughter on a rural road miles from home with no way to call for help. The color drained from his face, and for a moment I thought he might collapse. Then his expression hardened in a way I'd never seen before. Dad filed for divorce immediately. Diane was charged with child endangerment and abandonment. The courts granted my dad full custody, and Diane was ordered to stay away from us. In the aftermath, Dad and I learned that Diane had been researching how to contest my inheritance and had even consulted lawyers about claiming the house for herself. The house that she had known from the beginning was legally mine. Years passed. Dad never remarried, and we lived together in that beautiful old Victorian. He made sure I knew the history of the house, how it had been in Mom's family for generations, and the legal arrangements she had made before her death. When I turned 18, he formally transferred the deed to my name, though he continued to live there with me while I attended college locally. We had a good life together, healing from the twin traumas of Mom's death and Diane's betrayal. Then, when I was 22 and in my final year of college, tragedy struck again. My dad suffered a massive heart attack at work and didn't make it. I was devastated all over again, losing my only remaining parent. Fast forward 6 months. I had graduated with my degree in architecture, focusing on historic preservation, influenced by growing up in that beautiful old house. I was still living in our family home, still grieving Dad, when I received a surprising message on social media. It was from Diane. "I heard about your father. I'm sorry for your loss. I've changed over the years and would like to make amends. Could we meet?" Part of me wanted to ignore her completely, but curiosity won out. I agreed to meet her in a public place, a cafe downtown. When I saw her for the first time in 14 years, I was struck by how ordinary she looked. This woman who had loomed so large in my childhood nightmares was just a person, older now, with lines around her eyes and gray streaking her hair. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. "I've thought about you often over the years. Wondered how you were doing." "I'm sure you have," I replied coolly. She had the grace to look ashamed. What I did was unforgivable. I was young and selfish and you wanted my house, I finished for her. She nodded slowly. "I thought your father would be wealthy after your mother died. I thought that house would be my security. When I realized it wasn't his to give, I showed my true colors, didn't I?" I said nothing, just waited for her to continue. "I've been in therapy for years," she went on, "working through my issues with greed and entitlement. I really have changed, and when I heard about your father, I wanted to reach out to see if there was any way I could help you through this difficult time." Something in her tone set off alarm bells. Help me, how exactly? She hesitated, then said, I know you're young to be managing such a large property on your own. It must be expensive to maintain. I thought perhaps I could assist you. And there, it was. 14 years later, and she was still after the house. You haven't changed at all, I said quietly, standing up to leave. Don't contact me again. I walked out, but that wasn't the end of it. Over the next few weeks, Diane escalated her attempts to insert herself into my life. She sent emails, left voicemails, even showed up at my workplace once. Her message was, always the same. She wanted to help me with the house. Finally, I agreed to meet her one more time, this time at the house itself. I had a plan. When she arrived, I could see her eyes drinking in the property, the beautiful architecture, the manicured lawn, the prime location. Come in, I said. Let's talk about the house. Inside, I led her to the living room where I had laid out a stack of papers on the coffee table. Before we discuss anything, I'd like you to see these, I said. The papers included the original deed showing my ownership, the police reports from when she had abandoned me, the restraining order from years ago, and printouts of her recent messages to me. I don't understand, she said, shuffling through them. It's simple, I replied. You abandoned an 8-year-old child on the side of a road because you wanted this house. Now, 14 years later, you're still trying to get it. These papers are my reminder of exactly who you are. Her expression changed, hardened. You're just like your mother, stubborn, self-righteous. This house is too much for one person. You're being selfish. It's my house, I said firmly. It will never be yours. I think you should leave now. That's when she snapped. You listen to me? I've been patient. I've played nice. But we both know this house should be mine. Your father promised. My father promised nothing. He never owned this house. My mother made sure of that. Then I'll contest the will, she threatened. I'll say your mother was mentally incompetent when she made it. I laughed. A will that's been executed and unchallenged for 16 years? Good luck with that. She stood up, her face red with anger. Get in the car. We're going to sort this out once and for all. I'm not going anywhere with you. Either you get in the car right now, or I'm calling my lawyer and starting proceedings today. For some reason, I decided to go with her. Maybe it was curiosity to see how far she would take this, or maybe I wanted closure on this chapter of my life. Either way, I followed her to her car. As soon as we pulled away from the house, she started in on me again, her voice dripping with venom. You have no idea what I went through. Your father never got over your mother. I was always second. Best. That house is the least I deserve. We drove for about 20 minutes, in the same direction she had taken me all those years ago. When she turned onto a familiar country road, a chill ran down my spine. She was taking me to the same spot, history repeating itself. Stop the car, I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She stopped the car. We were on that same deserted stretch of road. Get out, she hissed. I'm 22, not 8, I replied. You can't intimidate me anymore. Get out of my car. You have a choice to make right now. Either you sign the house over to me, or our relationship is over, and you can find your own way back to town. I almost laughed at the absurdity. 14 years later, and she was using the exact same tactic. Our relationship ended the moment you abandoned an 8-year-old on the side of the road, I said quietly. I just came along today to confirm what I already knew. You haven't changed at all. I got out of the car willingly this time. Before I closed the door, I leaned in and said, Goodbye, Diane. Don't contact me again. She sped away, just like before, leaving me in a cloud of dust. But unlike last time, I wasn't helpless or afraid. I had my phone with me, and I had planned for this possibility. I called my mom's brother, Uncle Mike. He and his partner David were already waiting nearby. I had texted them our location using a tracking app. She did it, I told Uncle Mike when he answered. She actually abandoned me in the same spot as before. Stay right where you are. We're less than 5 minutes away. While waiting, I called my lawyer and explained what had happened. She was appalled and suggested we could add criminal charges of harassment and attempted coercion to the restraining order we were already preparing. Uncle Mike and David arrived quickly. They were both livid. "Some people never change," David said, shaking his head in disbelief. Uncle Mike was quieter, but his expression was thunderous. "Let's get you home." On the drive back, I filled them in on the whole conversation with Diane. Her demands and her threats. "She's going to get a shock when she gets back to the house," Uncle Mike said with a grim smile. When we pulled up to my home, Diane's car wasn't there yet. We had taken a shortcut. "Let's go inside and wait," Uncle Mike suggested. Inside, the three of us took positions in the front parlor, which faced the street. We didn't have to wait long. About 20 minutes later, we saw headlights in the driveway. Diane had returned, probably thinking I was still stranded on that country road. She would be expecting an empty house that she could perhaps search for valuables or documents. Instead, when she tried her old key and found it didn't work, I had changed the locks years ago, she began pounding on the door. "Open up, No, you're not home yet," she shouted. I nodded to Uncle Mike, who went to open it. The look on Diane's face when she saw him standing there instead of an empty house was priceless. Then she spotted me and David in the living room. "What? How? Did you?" she stammered. "Did you really think I'd get in a car with you without a backup plan?" I asked. "Did you really think I'd leave myself vulnerable to you ever again?" She pushed past Uncle Mike, her face contorted with rage. "You set me up." "No, Diane. You set yourself up just like you did 14 years ago." David held up his phone. "We have the whole thing on GPS tracking, plus an audio recording of what happened by the roadside. Would you like to hear it before or after the police arrive?" "Police?" she faltered. "Yes," I said calmly. "They're on their way. Abandoning. A child is a crime. Harassment is a crime. Attempted coercion is a crime. Shall I go on?" She looked from me to Uncle Mike to David, then at the phone recording everything. "You can't do this to me," she said, but the fight was leaving her voice. "I'm not doing anything to you," I replied. "You did this to yourself. Twice now." The police arrived within minutes. They took statements from all of us, reviewed the GPS and audio evidence, and arrested Diane on the spot. As they were leading, "Her out?" she turned to me one last time. "Your father would be disgusted by how you're treating me." "My father divorced you for abandoning his child on a deserted road," I countered. "I think he'd be proud of how I've protected myself and his legacy." Goodbye, Diane. After the dust settled from Diane's arrest, life began to return to normal. The court case against her was swift and decisive. With the evidence we had collected, the GPS tracking, the audio recording, and the history of her previous abandonment, she was convicted of attempted coercion, harassment, and violating the terms of the original court order from 14 years ago. The judge was particularly harsh, given the repeated nature of her offense. "It appears you learned nothing from your previous encounter with the law, Miss Thompson," he said during sentencing. "Targeting the same victim in the same manner 14 years apart shows a disturbing pattern of behavior." Diane received a 2-year prison sentence, with all but 6 months suspended, provided she undergo psychological evaluation and treatment. She was also ordered to pay substantial damages and was prohibited from coming within 1,000 feet of me or my property for life. In the months that followed, I focused on healing and restoring the house. During the renovation, I found a cedar chest in my mother's closet containing photo albums and a letter she had written to me before she died. In it, she explained why the house was so important, not just as property, but as a foundation for my future. "Remember that these walls don't just hold our family's history, they hold our future too," she wrote. "That's why I wanted you to have this house, not as a burden, but as a foundation for whatever beautiful life you choose to build." Those words guided me as I restored the house to its former glory. I applied everything I'd learned in my architecture degree, carefully preserving its historic features while making it my own. The local historical society even asked to feature it in their annual tour. Uncle Mike and David remained constant presences in my life, helping with projects and providing support. Through them, I connected with the Historical Society, where I met Tyler, who shared my passion for preservation. Our relationship blossomed as we discovered our shared values and interests. As for Diane, after serving her 6 months in prison, she moved to another state. The court garnishes her wages for the restitution payments, which I donate to a children's advocacy center that helps young victims of abuse and neglect. Sometimes I think about that day on the country road, both as a child and as an adult. Diane's ultimatum, either you give me the house or our relationship is over, had backfired spectacularly. She thought she had all the power, but in reality, she had already lost everything. The house was never hers to claim, and now it never will be. Update. Wow, I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. Thank you all for the supportive comments. Many of you asked for photos of the house, but for privacy reasons, I can't share those. It really is a beautiful old Victorian, though, with all the original woodwork intact. Several people asked what happened to Diane after her sentencing. As far as I know, she completed her 6 months in prison and moved out of state. The restraining order prevents her from contacting me in any way, and so far she's complied. And for those asking if this is real, yes, unfortunately it is. I sometimes still can't believe my stepmother abandoned me on a rural road when I was 8 and then tried the exact same tactic 14 years later. The silver lining is that I now know who my real family is, and I've created a beautiful home that honors my mother's memory. Life is good now. The house is filled with light and love again, just as my mother would have wanted. Final update. Thank you for all the awards and kind messages. I feel like I found a supportive community here. To address a few common questions. Yes, I did press criminal charges in addition to the civil suit. Diane received 6 months in prison plus probation. No, my father didn't leave Diane anything in his will. He had very little in his own name, mostly just his personal effects and a small life insurance policy. For those suggesting I should have been more compassionate, you weren't there to see how she manipulated my grieving father, how she abandoned an 8-year-old on a deserted road, or how she tried the exact same tactic as an adult. I don't feel I owe her anything. Several of you asked about the 2 men mentioned in the title. That was Uncle Mike and David, who were standing by my side when Diane returned to find she no longer had access to the house. I'm in therapy and doing well. Losing both parents young was incredibly difficult, but I'm building a good life for myself. To the person who asked about the wraparound porch, yes, it's still there and it's magnificent. I've restored the original porch swing where Tyler proposed last weekend. We're planning to build our future in this house, hopefully adding new chapters to its long history. I probably won't update again unless something significant happens. Thank you all again for the support and validation. It means more than you know.